All right, it's started, so you can begin.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening, sir, and welcome to this evening lecture series on the course Business 203, Leadership and Ethics, with lecturer Mr. Wayne BUSI. We will be doing chapter 4 this afternoon, which is Understanding Self, Yourself, which is taken from the Exploring Leadership text. The group presenters are Ian Batiste, Majid Khan, and myself, Maricia Julian. First, we have a chapter overview. Think of the things about yourself that shape your personal identity. Think about the things that fuel your emotions. Explore the role of self-awareness, self-concept, and self-esteem in leadership. Explore how values and the role of values are formed in developing character. Address your personality preferences in approaching decisions. And lastly, address how you learn. The first part of the chapter deals with development of self for leadership. And according to Bennis 1989, there are 4 lessons from which to develop self-knowledge. Firstly, you are your own best teacher. In other words, no one can teach you about yourself except you. Second, accept responsibility. You have to be accountable for what you do and don't play the blame game. In other words, don't blame anyone for your disappointments. 3, you can learn anything you want to learn. And 4, true understanding comes from reflection and your experience. Next, we move on to strengths and weaknesses. Each person brings a different mix of strengths and weaknesses to any situation. And that is because everyone is different and no 2 people are alike. Your strengths could become your weaknesses if exaggerated. And what this means is that you may be excellent, for example, in critical thinking, you find faults easily. So that you could use that strength to probably help a group for a presentation, like probably what we are doing here today. Some of you who are listening in and watching on are actually probably criticizing me at the moment to how I'm presenting. Your weaknesses could be seen as strengths by others. This is just the opposite to what I've said before. So as I'm presenting, my main aim, sorry, let me repeat that. Right. So some of you are actually using that skill right now to criticize how I'm presenting. But critically, you could use it as a weakness, as my weakness, sorry, instead of just not listening to me or trying to connect with what I'm saying. You just start criticizing and saying negative things. Identifying your passions and strengths. According to Clifton and Nelson, 1992, you could find your strengths by trying these strategies. First, you have to pay attention to the things you see others doing. For instance, you may be looking at a bartender mixing drinks and explain a set of skills, probably with fire and glasses, and your inner self telling you, I would like to try that, boy. Then try it. 2, listen to yourself when you have done something well, even if no one else noticed. So before you pay attention to others, you're now paying attention to yourself. So if you did something and you felt good about it, you might say to yourself, I feel like I've achieved something today, boy. Then you need to listen to that inner self. 3, identify the satisfaction you feel when you know something you did was terrific and gives you a feeling of well-being. So you did something and you're feeling fulfilled, you're feeling contented, you are happy and comfortable with what you did, then that could possibly be your strength. 4, know what things you find easy to learn quickly. So what I might find hard to learn, you might find easy. And if you realize that you're not taking much time to grasp it, then it could also be your strength. 5, study your successes for clues of excellence, for glimpses of what can be excellent. So you may have been successful at things in the past, and now you need to examine what they were and then realize that some of those things could actually be your strengths. And 6, think about your patterns of excellence. So as we go about our everyday lives, we probably give ourselves clues as to what our strengths may be. For example, you might find that if you cook something and offer it to your friends, they give you great compliments, or you are speaking in front of a crowd and you find that you are well articulated, you are comfortable doing it, and you are not nervous. Then those could also be your strengths. You now have to take those and label it and say to yourself, yes, I am confident in doing those. Developing your talent. According to Buckingham and Clifton, 2001, one of our greatest assets as human beings is talent. So firstly, you have to know yourself well and you will know what you are good at. So every one of us have talent. Basically, the things we are good at, we might say they are our talents. But we sometimes rarely see it because we try to focus on the things that we are not good at. 2, be aware of your weaknesses and manage them instead of trying to fix them. To be an effective leader, you cannot ignore your weaknesses, because if you know what they are, you will be able to identify your strengths much easier, and therefore you will have more time to play and focus on your strengths. So according to Clifton and Nelson, 1992, manage your weaknesses so the strengths can be free to develop and become so powerful they make the weaknesses irrelevant. 3, use and focus on the strengths you have. No one knows how long they will be on this earth, so we don't have time to try to change our weaknesses into strengths. What we should be doing is using the strengths we have, and the more we use our strengths, the more we will grow and develop our talent. And 4, be a dipper, and this comes from Dunn's theory of the dipper and the bucket by Rath and Clifton, 2004. So everyone has an invisible bucket to fill by an invisible dipper. If your bucket gets emptied, you will feel down, unhappy, depressed. But if your bucket is full, you will feel happy and full of encouragement. So the dipper is one of the most powerful leadership tools. If you say positive things about someone and focus on what they are good at, then you will have filled their bucket. When you use a dipper to fill someone else's bucket, you feel a sense of admiration, respect, appreciation. You will also feel motivated to continue doing what you did. Esteem and confidence. Self-esteem is the subjective element of how you feel about yourself. So what is he saying? That self-esteem is influenced by your personal feelings, tastes, opinions, etc. And you have to think about how you feel about yourself. How you think about how you feel about yourself, and that is what pushes you. Self-esteem is enhanced if you, 1, identify your strengths and weaknesses. This is indeed necessary for developing high self-esteem. If you don't know what you are good at, then you wouldn't be able to grow and improve. 2, believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, then obviously your self-esteem would be high. 3, eliminate self-doubt. Always have self-confidence. Always believe that you can do well, and if you did something well before, you can definitely do it again. 4, accept yourself. There are some things you cannot change about yourself, and the faster you realize that, the faster you build up your self-esteem. So, for instance, I am about 5 feet 10. I have long, narrow feet, and I have had a problem. Well, I will continue to have that problem of finding proper footwear. So, growing up, I always used to ask my mom if I could do surgery and cut off a piece of my toe, because I didn't like the problem of finding shoes. So for me, I wore sneakers for the majority of my life. 5, think differently about the aspects of yourself that impact negatively on your self-esteem. So think about things in a different way. So for instance, instead of saying you are shy and quiet, you could probably say that you are thoughtful and reflective. I now hand you over to Mr. Ian Batiste, who will be talking about understanding yourself.
Good afternoon, class. Good afternoon, Mr. Bisu. Understanding yourself. And when one tries to understand themselves, there are a number of questions that comes up. What makes you the way you are? And we will try to answer these few questions in the time allotted to us. What makes you the way you are? How much of your perception, values, temperament, personality, and motives come from the way you were raised? The influence of your surroundings, whether you attribute human behavior to nurture or nature. When we look at number 1, when we talk about what makes you the way you are, it simply means how much of your perception, what values, the temperament, personality, and motives come from the way you were raised. The influence of your surroundings and your contextual environment. How much of the way you are is inborn or genetic? Right? Debates, there have been several debates on these issues, especially when one look at themselves, and sometimes most persons may think, boy, how I like this, or how I this way. And that debate have been going on it have been raging on for years and years, and sometimes you persons themselves sit down and say, well, why I like this? Why I have to be so? And there are reasons for this, because in the whether you were the nurture and the socialization, the nature and socialization part of it would have attributed to your human behavior, and your nurture is your socialization, and your nature is your heredity. So what happens is the debates have raged on for years over whether to attribute human behavior to nurture, socialization, or nature, heredity. Becoming aware of influence of either nurture or nature in your own development is essential to understanding yourself. So one must understand your nature, your nurture, sorry, and your nature. So your nurture is how you socialize. Your nature is, as earlier on as Mauricia said, she's 5 feet and she can't change that, and that's her nature. So she will always be 5 feet, but her nurture is how she socialized, how she went around, how she grew up, what she see growing up, and that would account for the environment and the surroundings, because her surroundings would have influenced and play an integral part in her cognitive learning to understand where she is as it relates to her surroundings. Um, whether to attribute human behavior to your nurture, socialization, as I said, the socialization aspect, how you socialize, how you was brought up in terms of good morning, good evening socialization, or your nature heredity, as Julian explained just a while ago, the 5 feet. Next slide, please. And in this, in understanding oneself, there are factors that shape your identity because everybody is unique in their own way. I believe that the capacity of leadership is within each of us. Leaders are made, not born, and that everyone has a leader within them. So the factors that shape your identity, right, will give you a belief that the capacity of leadership is within each one of us. It's within each of us. Yes, we are how to say, we are individuals, but the adage that leaders are born are born, and everybody is a born leader. Yet no, that is not it. It is about learning. Leadership could be instilled in us because of our cognitive nature as well, because we just spoke about nurture, which is socialization, and nature. Our nature is, you didn't born with a leadership air on your head. You understand? So your socialization will determine how you become a leader, because leader is a cognitive part of the human nature, and that is why we are all here doing this leadership course, because we are here to learn leadership and to become leaders, because as I say, cognitively we are that part of the shaping our identity to become a leader. So when we learn the leadership tactics and techniques and all this stuff, at the end of the day we are shaping ourselves to become leaders, and not we are just a leader. It don't go down like that. Willing to assume positional leadership roles. Many times, I remember in this same class, sometime when Mr. BC was teaching, um, Mr. Bailey made a reference where persons may go on calls and somebody might be astute at something. For example, somebody might be able to do engineering, and because of the fact that they are able to do the engineering, the truck might break down. But at the time they would need a mechanic on the scene. So that person would take the role now as leader, because the situation presents itself. So they will come to the fore and be the leader. So although you are in charge and you are in the forefront, you have to stand back. So the fact that that person come forward, it indicates positional leadership, that that person step forward in being a leader in this situation. Being more comfortable with active participant roles. Now, sometimes persons don't want to be active. Some persons, they know everything, they're good, but they're not pushy and things. So they will more or less they will be behind the scenes, and then there are those that who would put forward, who will come forward, the active. You don't have to tell them, hey, if we say we're going down the road, they don't start to work. We going online, you see them start to put things in place. You understand? The caller that tell you, hey, transport ready for you, you know. So you just to change your clothes, and that is the some persons are comfortable being that active leader, right? While it have those that will sit back and wait for the situation, it have those that adjust by nature, or by the cognitive and being their self, you understand, understanding their identity, and those factors that would have shaped their identity would indicate that they will come forward to be the leader in the active participative roles. Next slide, please. Values, beliefs, and ethics. Values, beliefs, ethics, and character. As difficult as it may be to determine how characteristics like your gender, ethnicity, or religion influence the way you think and act, it is even more complicated and important to identify the values and beliefs that lead you to your ethical behaviors and build your character. values and beliefs. Each of us has preference as we know, as we construct our own value system. And in this instance, the value system, some persons construct their value system on logical, some scientific, some emotional. And the logical, the logical construct is where person think things out. I have a colleague, a friend of mine, he will, if two of us sit down and we having a conversation, I aggressive and carrying on and telling him, boy, think, and he just sit down like, boy, no, hear this now. X, Y, Z. And if you look at it this way, sometimes I just be like, boy, you too slow for me, you know, I can't make with that. And I carry on. So because I caught up in the whole thing. So I realized that I'm the emotional one in the whole thing. And he is just a logical person. He just like to look at things, hey, if this goes so, this is the other way. Sometimes we have something to do. Let me do it now, boy. Nah, relax now. And he sit down and he theorizing how everything, hey, this is how it's going. This will go this way and this will go that way. And I like, hey, we're taking too long because it's the emotion. I is the emotional type. And then there is the scientific type now, who build their values and beliefs on what we call data or scientific data. I have an uncle, he don't believe nothing. He believe everything that they have to show he have to be scientific. You understand? And going through this understanding myself chapter, I realize a lot of things that hey, but it's just emotional, I emotional, and this man just doing things logical, and I mean and we just end up in a little argument, and then I realize, hey, that is just the man values his belief, that is his character. So, and like just like my uncle, who like everything scientific, he think you have to show here, okay, what's going on? This is the data for this, 6 people dead because of this, or 6 people bounced the toe because of this type of shoe. He will take that preferably. So these are the preferences that construct our value system. So sometimes we be interacting with people as leaders, and we realize that we have to understand these values that these people, the persons possess. So while you carrying on, you might see a man just come because he working out, boy. So what he getting on so for is just to move that chair. You understand? So that the logic, and then they tell the scientific. So what are you crying on so for? Scientists say that this will happen. So what is he saying? And then you sending up the blood pressure, and you're riding up yourself, realizing that you is the emotional type. Next slide, please. Character and ethical behavior. Integrity in relationships is central to the value system needed among people working together towards change. Authenticity is rooted in action. That is both true and real in ourselves and in the world. And that is Terry 1993, right? A question was asked in terms of integrity and ethical behavior by the retired General Norman Schwarzkopf in the U.S. Army. And it indicated when asked what, and he answered this question, when asked what leadership qualities he looked for in leaders in the U.S. Army, Desert Storm retired General Norman Schwarzkopf said, probably far more important to me than competence was character. Probably far more important to me is than competence was character, integrity, ethics, and morality. I look for people who were willing to serve a cause and were what I would call selfless leaders rather than self-serving leaders. End of quote. Warren, 1994. And for a person character, the a person character promotes ethical decisions making and expects ethical behavior from others. So a person with character often looks for the same thing in return. The Josephson Institute of Ethics poses 6 pillars of character. And these 6 pillars are on the screen here now. And what Josephson Institute of Ethics poses these 6 character. These six pillars of character, which are trustworthy, treats people with respect, responsible, fair, caring, and good citizen. These 6 characters came from the Josephson Institute of Ethics to ethical practice, right? And a person who is trustworthy, is honest, has integrity, and keeps promises, and is loyal. Treats people with respect. This character, when treating people, they treat people with respect, is courteous, non-violent, non-prejudicial, and very accepting. When a person of character is fair, just, equitable, open, reasonable, unbiased, caring. A person with character is caring, kind, compassionate, emphatic, unselfish, is a good citizen, and that is law-abiding, does his share, performs community service, protects the environment. These little things that we take for granted, throwing paper and all this stuff, these are actually characteristics of a good citizen. And these 6 pillars comes from the Josephson Institute of Ethics. So they indicated that once these persons have these characteristics of a person that would have a good character. Next slide, please.
This is where Majid come in.
And I'll turn you over to Majid, who will continue the rest of our slides. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Batiste. Good day, sir. Good day, class. We're now talking about personal style preferences. You may see yourself as a caring person, committed to being fair and just. Yet you are puzzled as to why some people perceive you as judgmental or rigid. Therefore, understanding your personal preferences help explain how you function in this world and how you are perceived by others. The psychological types, how humans adapt to the world around them, is different for each one because of their personal preferences. You are so accustomed to the way you view things, you get things done, interact, make decisions, that perhaps you cannot imagine doing them differently. It is essential to realize that you have the capacity to broaden your approaches. The first step is to identify them. Carl Jung, 1923, identifies 4 core functions of human adaptation that he calls personal archetype or temperament types. Next slide, please. And the 4 core functions for human adaptations is how we relate to the world. That's extroverts and introverts. There are differences between those who are oriented to the outer world, which we know as the extroverts, and those who prefer the inner own world, known as the introverts. Those who are extroverts prefer outer world things, people. Extroverts do their best thinking out loud and in dialogues with others. Extroverts get their energy from being around people. They are sociable. People who are introverts are more oriented to the inner world or feeling of ideas. Introverts prefer to think things through and reflect before forming or stating their opinion. To do their best through self-reflection and internal reflection. The word, the use of the words is sometimes confused because extroverts does not mean outgoing and introverts does not mean shy or withdrawn. The terms refer instead of being preferred oriented to the outer or inner world. Number two, how we perceive the world. Sensing or intuitive. Sensing people relies on the five senses and prefer concrete facts and details. Sensing people are very practical and realistic, preferring the present or the past to the abstraction of the future. Intuitive people prefer to a bigger picture and like to see things as a whole. They are innovative and use imagination to develop many possibilities. Intuitive people like to project into the future, living in anticipation of how things can be better, improve, and change. Sensing people might say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Whereas intuitive might say, there's a better way. Groups need both kind of people. Number three, how we make judgments, thinking or feeling. Those who prefer thinking use logics and rationality. The head rules rather than the heart. Thinking approaches through critical thinking, analysis, and reliance on objective scientific method are rewarded and mostly are recorded in the school system. Feeling type people prefer to make judgments that accounts for relationship and the importance of human values and beliefs, with an emphasis on personal friendship. Those who prefer feelings may may find those who prefer thinking to be cold and too objective, whereas thinkers may find feelers too emotional and unable to stand firm on a decision. Number four, how we make decisions, judging and perceiving. Those who judge preferences prefer order and emphasizes resolving issues and making decisions to create order. People use judging preferences like typing to loose ends and seeking closure. They like clear beginning, deadlines, and ending. Perceiving type people prefer to keep things open-ended by gathering as much information as possible and being flexible. People with perceiving preferences handle ambiguity well and are known to go with the flow. We each have developed preferences of how we most comfortably perceive and judge our world. Next slide, please. Types of indicators. These types of indicators provide additional explanation of these preferences. We give a contrast between extroverts and versus the introverts. There was a survey where 75% of population were identified as extroverts, whereas 25% was identified as introverts. This was done by a method for accessing the Jugunian personality types, and this method is the Myers-Briggs type indicator, abbreviated as BMTI. If you're an introvert, you can and do enjoy people and good conversation, but you must have time and space to think and reflect. These indicators oppose each other. Whereas the extrovert sociability, the introverts show territoriality. The extroverts show external, the introverts show internal. The extroverts show interaction, the introverts show concentration. As well as breadth opposed to depth, extensive opposed to intensive. Another aspect is the introverts show limited relationship and extroverts show multiple of relationships. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, this back. Types of indicators, keywords as well too. Other part of the version preferences was, sorry, the sensing and the instituting. This was the survey done. 75% of the population were sensing, 25% was intuiting. It opposed each other as well. Sensing showed experience, intuiting showed hunches. Sensing showed past, intuiting showed future. Realistic to sensing, speculative to intuiting. Perspiration, opposed to inspiration. Actuality opposed to possibility. Down to it opposed to head in the cloud. Right. Continue from the last slide. Leaders come from all grouping of preferences, but clearly certain patterns of preference may exist in some careers or field that draw to those preferences as strengths. There are some indicator types that are not stable. We can say you can change your pattern over time. The action-oriented extroverts may become or be more contemplative or reflective introverts later in her life. So, the approach of learning. One of the elements of leadership is to focus on accomplishing something or changing something. How individuals understand the need for change and how effective individuals and groups can adapt to change is a learning process. Human beings go through a continual process of adaptation to change conditions, whether the conditions are impossible or induced. So learn from me two types, inductive and deductive. If you are extrovert, you are likely to enjoy group learning, tasks, and projects. Learn already from group discussion and think aloud as you respond to questions and comment in the group. Extroverts value experience and often leap into action with little or no planning. Allows them to think while they are active. If you're an introvert, you listen keenly and find you carry on a great dialogue in your head. When something important comes up, you prefer to think about it first and not jump to a hasty conclusion. If you are a sensing learner, you like details and facts and might prefer inductive thinking. You value the history and background of an issue to establish the context to learn about it. If you are an intuitive learner, you like the big picture and do not retain the small details well. You may be quick to jump to conclusion with little information. The sensing or instituting preferences may relate to a preference to either deductive or inductive way of thinking. Being deductive means you like to see the big picture and you know what the final outcomes is likely to be or what the whole is. And then you are comfortable looking at the parts and pieces. You like to see the forest before you examine all the trees. If you are inductive, you like to build up the big picture or conclusion by assembling all the parts and evolving your conclusion. You prefer to see all trees before you stand back and see the forest. A deductive learner might be frustrated with an inductive learner. Think of a class organization you know that are made up of one predominant type. Often a major will attract students who are more similar than different. If, however, you are mismatched in learning style, you may wonder why the groups does not readily see the benefit of your suggestion and perhaps even reject a process you propose. High diverse groups of learners need to acknowledge that people learn differently and offer options and choices that will appeal to the diversity within a group. Preferences is how we take in information, relate to others, make decisions, and learn all essential areas of awareness in relationship leadership. Next slide, please. I conclude now with the chapter summary. Aspects of your self-awareness that becomes key to understanding yourself as a participant and as a leader. We discuss the strengths, the weaknesses, developing your individual talents, high self-esteem, and self-confidence. We also discuss and reviewed basic values that are essential in a person's character, the psychological educational approaches to leadership, models to assess your personality, preferences, and learning preferences. Thank you, sir. Thank you, class. On behalf of myself, Ms. Julia, and Mr. Batiste, we thank you all.
Are there any questions at this time? All right, if there are no questions, I'll pause the recording.